The export sectors of all developing countries who are highly dependent on exports to developed countries' markets are being affected very significantly. There has been basically a collapse of world trade for the first time since Second World War. Today the world trade flows are 25% on the average below they were in 2007. So that means trillions of dollars have been affected. So there's a very broad impact of the financial crisis on development prospects of the developing countries. Now, what is happening on the UN development agenda? As you know, the Secretary General called a special session of the General Assembly, which is meeting on the 24th of June, on this issue of the impact of the financial and economic crisis on development of developing countries. And there is a major conference and a major report. I would like to draw your attention. If you go to the UN website, you can actually download the report of the Secretary General on this subject, and he has analyzed in detail the various impacts and what are the countermeasures that need to be taken with a set of recommendations. It is unlikely that all of those measures will be adopted, because it's a negotiating process with the developed countries, and it is unlikely that all of the recommendations that the Secretary General have made will be accepted. But the fact that this is taking place, it does change the attention level being given to the problems of developing countries. It does help in terms of putting the issues which developing countries are facing on the agenda of the international community in a very significant way. And it does have some impact on policy making in the advanced countries. So I think that the UN is playing a very critical role in trying to ensure that the voice of the poor, once again, is not lost in the wilderness, that their interests are safeguarded, even if partially, if not fully. Yes, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Khan. I have two questions. They might be quick. I don't know how difficult they are. How serious is the Security Council about their plans to expand the Security Council, especially with the permanent seats? And we've been hearing about this for quite a long time, but nothing is being yet on the table. And the second question is, even much earlier to the financial crisis, the Secretary Generals, or at least two of them, the United Nations, realized the problems of only keeping the governments working onto the development goals, and they invited the private sector to come and to help. Again, do you think that the United Nations bureaucracy and the government, especially governments like the United States, sector to get in? Because I believe this is to help into achieving those goals, if you're going to talk about the Millennium Development Goals.
Well, the first question is something which I would not say a lot about, because I think all of us know that the Charter, the way it is constructed, gives the veto power to the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, which means that no decision can be taken by the Security Council until all 5 agree to that decision. If even one of them says no, nothing can be done. So expansion of the Security Council has been on the agenda for the last 30 years now. And there is a special subcommittee of the Security Council. There was a General Assembly working group on reform of the Security Council. They are all there, and they have been discussing this for a long time. But the basic issue, I'm going to be very frank on this one, is we talked about it with Mr. Abu Ghazaleh the other day, that the European powers, of course, they all say that we want the expansion, we would like to have a permanent seat for Germany, and we would like to have a permanent seat for one developing country or 2 developing countries, from major ones from Africa and Latin America and Asia. So, and we know which countries we are talking about. It's, in the case of Africa, primarily it's South Africa. Sometimes Egypt is also mentioned. In the case of Asia, it is primarily India, although Pakistan is also mentioned, and Indonesia has also ambitions. In the case of Latin America, it is Brazil, but also Mexico has its own ambitions. So, but the basic issue is that means that the European powers who are on the Security Council, that is France and the United Kingdom, would have to accept a dilution of their representation, because it's the European Union now, and the European Union will eventually have a president and a foreign equivalent to a foreign minister. So the idea of sharing a seat between the European powers has been discussed, but they are, while they pay lip service to the idea of reform, they are not really prepared to give up the privilege that they have. Although the actual power structure in the world, both economic, primarily economic, but in terms of political aspects also, it has changed dramatically. Now, as this crisis has shown, no major international problem can be addressed without the actual participation and active agreement of countries like China and India and Brazil. Same thing with climate change. Same thing with security, major security issues. So while the power structure requires a different type of Security Council, we are not there. And I think in the near future, it is unlikely that we are going to be there. Or it can happen only if an agreement somehow can be reached that this would be done by a consensus of all the major powers of the world in the G20 context, with some give and take. So I don't know if that is going to be possible in the near future, but I think in the medium term, this has to happen if the Security Council and the UN have to remain relevant. Regarding the second question, the second question was related to
the role of the private sector.
The private sector, yes. I think there is very strong recognition in the United Nations now, both on the part of the developed countries, including the United States, and the developing countries and the Secretary General himself, that without participation by the private sector in the work of the United Nations, we can never achieve the UN development goals. Not only MDGs, but also in terms of climate change, because most of the pollution comes from the industry, the private sector, and so on. In terms of other issues, education, health, in every respect, the private sector has to play a role. Therefore, you can see since the mid-90s, there has been increasingly an open door policy. First by the Secretary General Kofi Annan, and then by the General Assembly, and then the first ever General Assembly task force set up with full participation by the private sector was the UN ICT task force. It was 2001. And the first ever private sector forum held in the General Assembly was last year when Mr. Talal Abu Ghazaleh was there with 100 CEOs of all the major companies of the world. We came together and said, what are these companies going to do, what the private sector is going to do in concrete terms, in pledges to support the MDGs. And there were important pledges announced, and we were contributing from the technology side. So I think that issue is no longer as critical as it was 5 or 10 years ago, because now the recognition from the developing countries side is equally there. There are some resistance points, like, for instance, the Cuban government. Cuba would be less reluctant, although they are still also willing to participate. And to some extent China, but I don't think that that's a major issue.